I knew it was going to be another one of those nights the moment Amber walked through the door. Her nose was crinkled, lips pursed into a tight frown, as if she'd caught a whiff of something foul. I tried to ignore the judgmental glances she shot my way as I bustled around the kitchen, putting the final touches on dinner. "Glenda, darling, you've outdone yourself as always," Harlan said, kissing me on the cheek. At least someone appreciated my efforts. "Mom, the pot roast smells amazing," Ethan chimed in, giving me a warm hug. Amber simply scowled and muttered under her breath, "If you say so." We settled around the dining table, and an awkward silence fell over us as we began eating. I could feel Amber's eyes boring into me, sizing up each bite with disdain. The pot roast, a family recipe using the cheapest cut of meat, was worlds away from the fancy fare she'd become accustomed to at overpriced Manhattan eateries. "So, how was everyone's day?" I asked, desperate to break the tension. Ethan launched into a story about the hilariously inept new intern at his office, but Amber didn't so much as crack a smile. She simply pushed the food around her plate, every so often shooting me a look that could curdle milk. My efforts to make pleasant conversation died on the vine as Amber's displeasure became more and more palpable. By the time we finished eating, the atmosphere had grown so frosty you could hang meat in it. "Well, that was just dreadful," Amber said, making no attempt to mask her contempt as she rose from the table. "I'm going to call Francesca and see if she grabbed a table at that new tapas place." She stormed off to make her call, leaving me to clean up yet another mess, literally and figuratively. As I scraped the remains of my labor of love into the trash, I couldn't help but overhear her conversation floating in from the living room. "Yes, it was just pedestrian slop as usual from Glenda," she sneered in a mocking tone. "I told Ethan he needs to get me cooking lessons for my birthday because I simply cannot survive on such unsophisticated, mediocre fare." Her callous words twisted like a knife in my heart. But in that moment, the sting of her insult ignited something within me. A simmering defiance, a refusal to simply take her abuse lying down any longer. Amber's condescending ways had gone too far for too long. If it was fancy food she wanted, I vowed, fancy food she would get. One way or another, I would expose her snobbish charade for all to see. I could feel Amber's smug gaze burning into the back of my head as I tapped my foot impatiently in the long line at Boulangerie Sublime. This trendy little bakery was all the rage, their decadent desserts coating the lips of every Upper East Side socialite. And of course, it was Amber's new obsession du jour. I simply must have the Grand Marnier soufflé for my book club meeting, she had demanded that morning while scanning reviews on her iPad. The ladies will surely be impressed. Getting my hands on one of those coveted soufflés wasn't going to be easy, though. The bakery's limited quantities sparked a daily stampede, with customers queuing up before dawn like they were vying for Coachella tickets. But Amber's whims were not to be denied. "Don't forget, you need to get there right when they open at 8 a.m., she instructed with an air of smug superiority. "They always sell out before noon." As if I didn't already have enough to do getting ready for her pretentious book club, squeezing in this errand was going to be a major pain. But I knew better than to argue with Her Royal Highness. After jostling my way through the throngs of line waiters for over an hour, I was finally ushered inside the bakery. My hopes were immediately dashed as the snooty clerk shook his head in disdain. "We're all out of the soufflés, I'm afraid," he announced with an uppity French lilt. "You'll have to come back first thing tomorrow." My face flushed with embarrassment as the other customers openly mocked my futile errand. "Seriously, lady? Did you expect to waltz in at 9:15 and snag one?" A nasally woman clucked from behind me. Dejected, I trudged back home, dreading Amber's reaction to my failure. Sure enough, when I walked through the door, she was waiting in the kitchen with her signature sneer. "Well?" she demanded imperiously. "Where is my soufflé?" "But they were all out by the time I got there," I stammered, bracing for her wrath. "Are you kidding me?" she exploded, her face contorting into a mask of rage. "You had one simple task. How could you possibly mess that up?" She ranted and raged for what felt like an eternity, her insults growing more vicious and demeaning by the minute. All the while, I just stood there and took it, burning with humiliation and resentment. "I swear, Glenda, sometimes your incompetence is staggering," she spat. You're useless, an utter failure. Those hateful words detonated something deep inside me, igniting a fury I could no longer contain. In that volatile moment, my desire to appease this vile woman evaporated like smoke. She wanted to see just how much of an utter failure I could be. Message received, Amber. Game on. Over the next few days, Amber's scathing treatment of me continued unabated behind closed doors, but the moment Ethan or Harlan were around, her demeanor underwent a striking transformation. Glenda, darling, I simply can't get enough of your cooking. She would gush with saccharine sweetness while patting my hand. Everything you make is just sublime. The compliments dripped like hot wax from her lying lips. I could hardly believe this was the same woman who had berated me as a hopeless failure just hours earlier. Ethan, ever the naive one, just beamed with pride at his wife's supposed appreciation for my culinary talents. That's my Glenda, he would chuckle, pulling me in for an affectionate hug. A regular Julia child, isn't she? If only he knew the truth about the venom Amber spewed behind his back. How she ridiculed and denigrated everything and everyone she perceived as beneath her cultivated airs. No one was spared her snide condemnation, not even her own family. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen whipping up a batch of my famous oatmeal chocolate chip cookies, a treasured family recipe using basic, inexpensive ingredients. Amber came sweeping in, wrinkling her nose at the homey aromas. Good Lord, Glenda, you're not serving those pedestrian monstrosities at the charity luncheon, are you? She sneered with undisguised revulsion. I felt my cheeks flush with humiliation and outrage. But before I could respond, Ethan strolled in, and her scowl instantly morphed into a brilliant smile. Those cookies smell delightful, mother-in-law, she chirped in a sickly sweet tone. Just like from a gourmet bakery. The ladies will go wild for them, I'm sure. Ethan just chuckled obliviously as he snatched a cookie off the tray, cramming it into his mouth. Yup, these are the greatest, he mumbled through a mouthful of crumbs. You've really outdone yourself this time, Mom. It was all I could do to keep from hurling the tray across the room. This two-faced, malicious behavior from Amber was becoming more than I could bear. My own son was so blind to her true, vicious nature that my heart ached for him. Later, after Ethan had left for work, I confronted Amber about her abhorrent double act. Why must you insult me and put down my cooking 1 minute, then turn around and sweetly praise it the next? I demanded, my voice trembling with pent-up emotion. She simply shrugged and rolled her eyes at my wounded indignation. Please, Glenda, don't be so sensitive, she scoffed coldly. I'm just looking out for Ethan's best interests. He doesn't need his oafish mother serving up bargain basement swill and embarrassing him in front of his colleagues and friends. The cruel arrogance in her tone crystallized my determination right then and there. Enough was enough. It was time for this two-faced witch to get her comeuppance once and for all, and I would be the one to serve it up to her on a silver platter. With Amber's callous words still ringing in my ears, I started hatching a plan to finally expose her two-faced behavior. The next Sunday, I was hosting the whole family for a big dinner, the perfect opportunity to set my trap. As I busied myself in the kitchen prepping the meal, I made sure to utilize only the simplest, most basic ingredients, the kinds of bargain basement fare Amber openly mocked. Pork shoulder from the supermarket budget bin. Potatoes, carrots, and onions straight from the local produce stand. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious, just humble, home-cooked goodness. When Amber arrived with Ethan and Harlan in tow, her eyes immediately narrowed with disdain at the rustic aromas wafting from the kitchen. What is that smell? She wrinkled her nose. It better not be another one of your tragic downscale meals, Glenda. Actually, it's a very special dish I've been working on, I replied with a sly grin, but you'll just have to wait and see. Amber's signature scowl told me all I needed to know. The bait had been taken. As we gathered around the table to eat, I made sure to pile Amber's plate high with the humble fixings, much to her obvious disgust. She poked and prodded the food with her fork, grimacing. Well, are you going to at least try it? I asked innocently. Amber flashed a sour glance at Ethan and Harlan, both of whom were already wolfing down their portions with obvious enjoyment. Reluctantly, she raised a forkful of the pot roast to her pursed lips. This looks dreadfully rustic, she proclaimed with obvious disdain. but I suppose I can choke it down, for Ethan's sake. I held my breath as she took her first tentative bite, bracing for the inevitable torrent of disparaging comments. But it never came. Instead, her eyes went wide with surprise as she slowly chewed and swallowed. Actually, this isn't half bad, she admitted grudgingly after a pause. The flavors are quite robust, I'd say. Buoyed by that small victory, Amber soon began shoveling the food down with almost rabid gusto, grunting with approval between ravenous bites. Ethan and Harlan looked on in pleased bemusement, no doubt shocked by her uncharacteristic zeal for my rustic home cooking. "Glenda, this may be the best dish you've ever prepared," she effused, mopping up the last of the gravy with a slice of bread. "You've clearly outdone yourself this time. Why, I'd wager this swill could give even those pompous bistros in the city a run for their money." The naked contempt in her tone as she insulted my humble offerings sent a hot flash of anger through my body. But I managed to keep my expression impassive, disguising my roiling fury behind a thin smile. "Why, thank you, Amber," I cooed. "I'm so pleased you enjoyed it." Oh, but she would soon eat those smug, condescending words. That's when the true meal would begin. After clearing the dinner plates, I made sure to heap lavish praise on Amber for her apparent newfound appreciation of my home cooking. "I'm so delighted you enjoyed that meal," I gushed, laying it on thick. "Your refined palate clearly recognized the superior quality of those ingredients." Amber just nodded haughtily, lapping up the flattery like a parched cat. "Well, of course I could taste the difference," she preened. "You simply must share where you sourced that exceptional pork and produce." This was the opening I'd been waiting for. Time to set the next phase of my plan into motion. "Actually, those ingredients were nothing special," I replied with a sly grin. "Just picked up at the regular grocery store down the street. But I'm so pleased my preparation skills elevated them to your discerning standards." Amber's brow furrowed with confusion as she processed this admission. But before she could respond, I pressed on with my ruse. "In fact, I've been inspired to take my cooking to even loftier heights," I declared with faux enthusiasm. For our next family dinner, I'm going to prepare a true gourmet feast utilizing only the finest, most premium ingredients money can buy. That piqued Amber's interest, her eyes glittering with avarice. "Do go on," she urged, leaning forward expectantly. "Well, I'm going to start by sourcing some primo beef tenderloin from that elite butcher in the city," I began, relishing every fabricated detail. "The one that supplies all the iconic steakhouses and commands a 3-month waiting list just to get a prime cut." Amber was practically salivating at this point, hanging on my every word. Ethan and Harlan just exchanged bemused glances, clearly not understanding what had gotten into me. Then for the produce, I'm thinking of flying in some heirloom varieties from this acclaimed farm in Tuscany that Michelin chefs are raving about, I went on breathlessly. Of course, I'll need to track down some creme de la creme dairy products too, butter from an artisanal creamery, that sort of thing. "Glenda, this all sounds marvelous," Amber gushed, fanning herself. "A true Epicurean adventure. You simply must let me assist in sourcing these world-class delicacies." I shook my head, reveling in her transparent eagerness to indulge her snobbish Epicurean fantasies. "Oh no, my dear, I insist on handling every detail myself as a surprise for my treasured family." Little did she know, the real surprise was yet to come. As the evening drew to a close and our guests prepared to depart, Amber pulled me aside with ill-disguised glee twinkling in her eyes. "I can't wait to savor your culinary masterpiece at the next gathering, Glenda," she purred. "It's about time your talents are put towards more elevated ends." With a wink, she turned and sashayed out, utterly clueless of the role she would soon be playing in my delicious come-uppance. This was gonna be good. The big night had finally arrived. Amber swept into the dining room, her nose already wrinkling disdainfully at the simple table setting. "Really, Glenda? This rustic decor?" she tutted, running a manicured finger along the plain linen tablecloth. "For the lavish spread you've been boasting about, I expected something a bit more elegant." I suppressed a smirk as I bustled out carrying a silver serving dish. "Don't worry, dear, the true elegance is what's underneath this cover." I slowly lifted the lid with a flourish, revealing a thick, juicy tenderloin roast glistening with a rich demi-glace. Amber's eyes grew wide as saucers, greed and gluttony etched across her features. "Is that—" she gasped, practically panting. "Why, yes, the much-hyped beef from that world-renowned butcher in Manhattan," I proclaimed with feigned nonchalance. "The one with the 3-month waiting list, as I mentioned." Amber's eyes fluttered with rapture as she leaned over to inhale the heady aroma. "Glenda, it's magnificent. I can practically taste the decadence already." She fairly swayed on the spot like a debutante recovering from the vapors, as I set the dish down in front of her with a ceremonious flourish. The other platters I paraded out in succession only heightened her delirious anticipation. "And these," I announced with a wave of my hand, "petite potatoes cultivated from an elite farm in the French countryside that supplies 3-star Michelin chefs. Hand-delivered yesterday by a master gardener after a months-long germination process." That was complete hogwash, of course. I'd picked those russets up from the supermarket bargain bin just like always. But Amber hungrily gobbled up every word, nodding feverishly all the while. Finally, I presented the pièce de résistance, an exquisite cheesecake drizzled with an emerald mint glaze. Behold, New York's most elite dairy purveyor's smoothest triple cream chèvre, accented with sun-ripened strawberries flown in fresh this morning from a boutique farm in Provence, I breathlessly described with a completely straight face. In reality, it was just a standard supermarket cheesecake doctored up with some mint extract and strawberry jam from my pantry. But Amber was utterly transfixed, borderline comatose with avarice as she fixated on every imagined delicacy before her. "Glenda, I'm speechless," she finally gasped, clutching a trembling hand to her hollow bosom. "This opulent feast it's too much. You've truly outdone yourself." Ethan and Harlan just gawked in stunned silence, clearly wondering what had gotten into me with all this bombastic overselling. Little did they know it was all a grand setup for Amber's looming humiliation. No sooner had we dug into the very first course than Amber began to moan and groan with rapturous delight, showering me with breathless compliments between every decadent bite. "This beef is a transgressive experience, Glenda, a spiritual awakening in every velvety morsel." It went on and on like that through each successive dish. By dessert, she was practically swooning, scraping up every last crumb and licking her plate clean. "Best meal I've ever had, anywhere," she raved, practically in a fugue state. "You've ruined me for all other food." I just smiled thinly and thanked her as Ethan and Harlan exchanged bewildered shrugs. But inside I was grinning wide in gleeful anticipation. The trap had been perfectly sprung. Now for the final delicious sting. As Amber sat back with a contented sigh, gently patting her stuffed belly, I decided to strike while the iron was hot. "So, I take it you enjoyed this little culinary adventure?" I asked innocently, trying not to let my grin show too much smug satisfaction. "Enjoyed it? That doesn't even begin to describe it." Amber gushed, her eyes glazed over in a dreamy trance. This was a full-body experience that transcended mere sustenance. Every bite was a finely crafted masterwork to be savored and contemplated. Ethan and Harlan shot each other confused looks, clearly baffled by her overblown outpouring of praise. Bless their hearts, they had no clue what a charade this entire evening had been. "Well, I'm overjoyed my efforts met with your discerning approval," I replied with a sly smile. "Though I must admit, I simply couldn't have pulled off such an Epicurean tour de force without your invaluable guidance." Amber blinked slowly, her brow furrowing. "My guidance? What do you mean?" Ooh, this was going to be delicious. "Why, your constant insistence on only the finest, most elite ingredients, of course," I exclaimed with mock innocence. "You've trained my palate to reject anything less than the utmost in culinary perfection." I could see the dawning look of baffled realization creeping across Amber's face as I drove the knife deeper. "Take this beef tenderloin, for instance," I went on breezily. "You made it quite clear that only the most luxurious, world-class cut would pass muster with your refined tastes. So, of course, I had to source it from that impossible boutique butcher you're always raving about." Amber's mouth worked silently as she processed my words, panic flashing in her eyes, but I kept piling it on ruthlessly. "And the produce? Well, you've hammered home time and again how pedestrian American crops simply wouldn't do for a true gourmand like yourself. So naturally, I had to go the extra mile obtaining these French and Italian delicacies flown in from your preferred purveyors overseas." By this point, Amber's face had drained of all color, giving her a sickly pallor. She flicked a terrified glance over at Ethan and Harlan, seeing the first cracks in her facade forming. That's not... You've got it all wrong, she sputtered desperately. But I was just getting warmed up, ready to put the killing stroke on this whole rotten charade of hers once and for all. Oh, and this cheesecake, I crowed, barely able to contain my delight. You certainly gave me an education on why no ordinary cream cheese would suffice. Only the organic, artisanal triple cream from that snobby little Madison Avenue fromagerie could possibly meet your lofty standards. Amber opened and closed her mouth wordlessly, utterly at a loss as the entire web of lies she'd spun unraveled around her. Ethan and Harlan's dumbstruck expressions revealed the veil had finally been lifted on the disdainful elitist monster they'd married into the family. I took a deep breath, steadying myself to deliver the coup de grace. Which is why, I announced in a tone dripping with sugary faux sweetness, I wanted to sincerely thank you, Amber, for inspiring me to put all my skills and effort into this sumptuous high society repast. I gestured grandly at the plates of half-eaten food surrounding us, each course prepared from the plainest, most basic supermarket provisions money could buy. A gourmet masterpiece, you called it, fit for the most refined of culinary queens, when really it was nothing more than my typical bargain basement home cooking dressed up in fancy airs. The penny finally dropped for Amber as her face contorted with impotent rage and humiliation. Her menu of deceit had finally been laid bare, and the main dish was an extra-large serving of cold, harsh truth. Game, set, and match, courtesy of this fed-up mother-in-law. The aftermath of my grand unmasking played out like a shipwreck in extreme slow motion. Amber's face contorted through a gamut of emotions, shock, anger, shame, desperation, as the truth of her deception sank in. You conniving old witch, she finally sputtered, eyes bulging with outrage. How dare you try to humiliate me like this in front of my husband? Ethan sat in stunned silence, his expression unreadable as his wife's cringeworthy facade crumbled before his eyes. Harlan, on the other hand, looked like he was trying not to bust a gut laughing. Amber, honey, I think the only one doing any humiliating here is you, he chuckled, shooting me an approving wink. This was just a long overdue reality check. Reality? You want to talk reality? Amber raged, rounding on my poor clueless son. Wake up and smell the green juice, Ethan. Your quaint little mama and her down-market home ec skills don't belong in this century, let alone our social sphere. As those hateful words sliced through the air, something shifted in Ethan's face. The rose-tinted scales of denial seemed to fall away as he finally got an unfiltered look at the poisonous snake he'd married. That's enough, he said quietly, raising a hand to silence Amber's tirade. I've heard more than enough out of you tonight. Amber froze, her mouth hanging open in gobsmacked shock. She clearly wasn't accustomed to Ethan going against her arrogant diktats. But darling, you can't be serious, she sputtered incredulously. You're really going to take the word of this spiteful old troll over your own wife? Ethan's jaw tightened as he rose to his feet, anger flashing in his eyes. Maybe if my wife had been an honest, loyal partner, instead of a lying, materialistic snob, I wouldn't have to make that choice. The air fairly crackled with tension as Amber's shrill scoffing filled the room. Well, I can certainly see where your true priorities lie, Ethan Morris, with the help in their downscale ways, apparently. She shot me one last murderous glare before snatching up her purse and storming towards the door. Don't worry, I know when I'm not wanted, she hurled over her shoulder. Have fun playing house with Mummykins and her pathetic home cooking. I deserve better than this poverty-class charade. The slamming of the front door behind her echoed through the stunned silence that followed. Ethan stood rooted to the spot, head bowed, as the gravity of this marital rupture washed over him. At last he raised his gaze to meet mine, a lifetime of pent-up hurt and frustration shining in his eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You were right all along about Amber. I was just too blind and dazzled to see the truth. In that moment, I felt the icy knot of resentment that had taken root in my heart all those years began to thaw and dissolve. My son had been lost, true, but now, finally, he had found his way home. As I pulled Ethan into a fierce, forgiving embrace, I knew our family had been irrevocably broken, but not beyond repair. We would pick up the pieces, slowly healing the rifts that Amber's greed and cruelty had torn open through our unconditional love and stubborn decency. And this time there would be no snobby pretenses or polite fictions masking the truth. Just the honest bonds of this mother and son duo firmly intact, sharing good food, good company, and stubborn determination to always keep it real, no matter how ugly.
You should be careful about your relationship with your mother-in-law. These were words casually spoken by a friend before marriage. Honestly, back then, I was so elated about the fact that my marriage was confirmed that I didn't think much about those words. I thought about it only to that extent. The apartment I was considering moving into after marriage was closer to my parents' house, and there was no concern about living with my husband's parents, since his brother and his wife were already living with them. I had visited them, and my mother-in-law seemed like an ordinary person with no issues. Well, we weren't deeply involved, so I couldn't say much. Even so, I hadn't thought too deeply about it. I was too happy about marrying someone I am genuinely thrilled to be with. So, at that time, I still hadn't realized. I never thought my marriage would later turn out that way. My name is Nina, and I am almost 30 years old, working as a nurse. I used to work full-time, but 2 years ago after giving birth, I switched to part-time and left my child at the hospital's daycare during work hours. On the other hand, my husband Terry works for a regular company and seems busy every day. Even with such a busy schedule, he came home early every day when I was pregnant and did the housework. And after I gave birth, he supported me and Terry ways on his days off from work. A kind husband and a cute son. I was really happy every day I spent with them. Then one day, tragedy suddenly struck. Please, calm down and listen. Your father and mother are... The call came suddenly from the hospital. The news was that my own father and mother had died in a car accident while traveling. My parents, who had a good relationship, frequently went on trips together after my father retired at the age of 60. When my father worked at the company, he was very busy, and working on weekends was a given. Although he earned a decent income, he lamented that he couldn't spend much time with my mother. That's why after retiring, he had vowed to travel a lot, and recently he had kept that promise, leading a happily retired life with my mother. Just the other day, when we went to play with our son, even then he bought toys because our son's birthday is coming up soon, and during our recent trip, he gave us Terry souvenirs saying, "Let's all go on a trip together next time." Both my father and mother were looking forward to it. But why did something like this happen? I couldn't easily come to terms with the reality of losing my lovely parents all at once. Inside our home, there are Terry photos of our family and parents together. In my smartphone, there are numerous pictures taken just the other day when we visited my parents, capturing moments with both my parents and my son. Every time I see those pictures, my heart feels tight. Mom. My son, with a concerned expression, peeks at me as I cry. Nina, it seems Ricky is worried about you. My husband says that and gently strokes my head. I'm sorry, Ricky. Mom has to do her best, right? Saying so, I hug my son. After that, I switched over to preparing for the wake and funeral. And in fact, everything was so hectic during that time that I didn't have time to grieve, and the funeral was over in a flash. However, when the busyness subsides, the sorrow wells up suddenly. Every day I am alone in the bathtub at night and have to suppress the sound of my own voice. Days like that continued in succession. But one day, a man who identified himself as a lawyer called me. We arranged a schedule and I met with that lawyer, visiting his law firm. According to the lawyer, due to my parents' passing, I would inherit the land of our family home, the house itself, and a multi-million-dollar inheritance. They had left a notarial deed just in case, apparently prepared for any unforeseen circumstances. My head couldn't catch up with this sudden development, but as various documents were shown to me, I somehow grasped the magnitude of the situation. I felt a warmth in my heart as I realized my parents must have been thinking about the worst case scenario for a long time, leaving me so much just in case something happened. After returning home, I told my husband about the land and house my father and mother had left. I didn't go into details about the inheritance amount, but I informed him that something had been left behind. In response, my husband said, "Well, since we have the opportunity, let's move to your hometown, Nina." We were still living in an apartment at that time, and we had been discussing moving to a slightly larger place considering our child. However, both of us were too busy with work to find time for property viewings, so the talk of moving had been postponed. In fact, if it were my parents' house, it wouldn't be too far from my current apartment, and moving there wouldn't be that difficult with my son. Besides, my parents' house had just been remodeled a few years ago, not quite new, but much nicer. In this way, after consulting with my husband, the three of us as a family decided to move to the hometown where my parents had lived. The move was somewhat challenging because it happened suddenly, but after settling down, we lived an ordinary life for a while. But then, my brother-in-law and his wife, who live with my mother-in-law at my parents-in-law's house, decided to move out. My brother-in-law had been assigned a new responsibility at work due to the company's circumstances, and, despite his grief, he couldn't refuse the move. My brother-in-law's family also has children, and my sister-in-law is a full-time homemaker. Since the children are attached to my brother-in-law, it seems there was no option to live separately as a family. As a result, my mother-in-law ended up living alone in my husband's hometown. Upon learning this, my husband began to express excessive concern about the situation. "Mom, are you okay being alone? Until now it was fine because my brother was there." My mother-in-law was younger than my parents and very active. She used to go out alone regularly, even drove, so there was no need to worry for a while. My husband seemed to be even more worried and concerned than I was. But my easygoing thoughts were short-lived. My mother-in-law slipped on the stairs at home and broke her right leg. When my husband heard about this, he flew to the hospital even though he was at work, and from then on he went to the hospital every day for my mother-in-law until she was discharged. He used to come home from work and help me with the housework and spend as much time as possible with our son. However, ever since my mother-in-law started living alone in his parents' house, especially on days off, my husband often went alone to visit her, and our family time together as a trio almost disappeared. When I returned from visiting my mother-in-law at the hospital, I said to my husband, "You have the day off tomorrow, right? Since I'm also off, how about going on a picnic with Ricky and me?" When I made this suggestion, after a long time, my husband, with an intense tone, "With my mother in this situation, how can you say such a thing? Do you lack empathy?" he said angrily. However, when we actually went to visit my mother-in-law in the hospital with our son, she seemed lively, and there seemed to be no life-threatening condition, so I couldn't help but wonder if it was really necessary for him to visit her every day. Then came the day of my mother-in-law's discharge. My husband cheerfully said, "I'll go to pick up my mother from the hospital and have lunch together," and left the house. My son and I had gone shopping together and came home for a nap when we heard a car stop. My husband must have returned. "I'm home," he said, and when I opened the door, there stood not only my husband but also my mother-in-law. "Huh? Mom?" Confused, I stood there, and with a beaming smile, my husband said, "Mom will be here for a while." "Nice to meet you, Nina." My mother-in-law is smiling as she says so. No, wait. I didn't hear anything. I wasn't even consulted. As I stood there in a daze thinking this, my husband and mother-in-law went up into the house, both of them excited. Seated deeply on the sofa, she said, "Nina, could I have some tea?" "Oh, Nina, me too." Seeing that, the two started watching TV without even greeting our son. I felt a bit irritated, but considering that my mother-in-law had just been discharged and must be tired, I made tea. That day marked the beginning of my hell. My mother-in-law, whose foot had not yet fully healed, began ordering me to do everything around her. She wanted me to accompany her to the toilet, take care of her bath, and prepare all her meals. What about when I'm at work? I wondered. In response, my mother-in-law would complain to my husband, saying, "She's neglecting her mother-in-law. What a terrible daughter-in-law." Then my husband would scold me, saying, "Mom went through a lot. Show more consideration." Even if I cooked exactly what she wanted, she'd say, "It's too salty. You can't eat this. I'll only take a bite." Or she'd demand, "I really want some sweets from that shop. Go buy them right now." And even if I bought them, she'd take a bite and say, "This isn't it," making such things a daily occurrence. While taking care of my son and working, I was also forced to handle my mother-in-law's caregiving, and every day left me exhausted. Despite seeing me struggling, my husband showed no signs of helping and instead said, "Mom is having a hard time. Don't stress her out too much." I realized that my mother-in-law seemed more important to him than our son. Thinking about it made me feel rather sad. This kind of life went on for several months. Even though my mother-in-law's leg should have already healed, she would say, "My leg hurts," and give various orders in front of me. I couldn't endure it anymore, so I said to my husband, "Your mother's leg should be healed by now, but she's pretending it still hurts. Say something to her, Terry." When I said that, my husband slapped me. "What are you saying? When my mom was going through a tough time, are you still my wife? Don't you want to help your husband's mother?" He shouted like that. "Even though you're a nurse, you can't even handle such things. Maybe you should quit, huh?" When he said that, I couldn't bear it and tears started flowing. It seems that my mother-in-law, aware that my husband supports her, has recently been openly bullying me in front of my husband without any concern. I must have reached various limits, more than I thought, as one day I collapsed during work. Fortunately, since my workplace was a hospital, they immediately conducted tests and administered an intravenous drip. It was determined that the cause was mental and physical exhaustion, so as a precaution, they decided I should stay in the hospital for a day. The doctor who examined me advised, "For now, try not to push yourself too hard." I contacted the hospital's childcare facility and explained the situation. Since it was unlikely that my husband or mother-in-law could come, I decided to have the night shift staff's children take care of my child until the morning. Then I received a call from my husband. "Hey, do you think you're on vacation, Nina? My mom is preparing dinner. Where are you slacking off?" I was scolded like that, but I honestly told him that I collapsed at the hospital and had to stay for a day. However, instead of worrying, my husband sighed heavily. "You can't even manage your own health. You're a disgrace to nurses. Hurry up and come home." He said that. Beside him, my mother-in-law was making a fuss. "Come home and take care of me. A useless wife like you has no time to sleep." That's what she said, and she and my husband continued to insult me. I kind of felt like everything was ridiculous the moment I heard it. Until now, I managed to endure, thinking of them as my husband and mother-in-law, but truly, at this point, I've had enough. I silently ended the call. After that, persistent calls and messages continued to arrive, but I ignored them all, and finally, after a long while, I was able to sleep peacefully by putting my phone on silent mode. The next day, I came home with my son and found my husband and mother-in-law standing in the doorway. "You, cut it out already. Ignoring calls too," Terry shouted at me as soon as he opened his mouth. "That's right. You're useless as it is, and now you're skipping a whole day." My mother-in-law, who was with him, followed my husband and complained. Faced with such a husband, I told him, "Please, divorce me." Terry and my mother-in-law seemed surprised. Their eyes widened as if they hadn't expected me to say such a thing. "I've brought the divorce papers. Please, sign them." Saying so, I handed the divorce papers to my husband. However, it seemed that my husband didn't like the fact that I brought up such a matter. "If you really want a divorce, at least bring some money. I've been taking care of you all this time." He grinned and said something like that. Did he think that if he brought up the subject of money, I would give up? I took an envelope out of my bag and handed it to my husband. My husband's eyes widened as he opened the envelope. Yes, because inside the envelope was $30,000 in cash. Take it and leave now. This is my house. If you don't leave, I will call the police. I said that, and my husband and my mother-in-law turned pale and left. Of course, I made them fill out the divorce papers. With this, the story of my husband and mother-in-law comes to an end. However, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Those two need to make amends for their actions from now until the end. After that, I consulted the lawyer I had used before regarding my parents' inheritance. I claimed compensation from my husband and mother-in-law, including child support from my husband. I had recorded the abusive language that my husband and my mother-in-law had used towards the end, planning to use it in case of need for a divorce. I had endured until then, because I didn't want to take away a father from my son. However, upon reflection, I felt that a man like my ex-husband was more pitiable. As a result, the compensation from my ex-husband and my mother-in-law amounted to approximately $50,000. In addition, since there is child support for my son, my ex-husband will have to continue paying me regularly in the future. The $30,000 I had given them was spent on a trip right after they left home, and they could not pay the $50,000 bill in one lump sum. So, they had to go into debt. If they had kept the $30,000 I mentioned instead of spending it, the alimony wouldn't have been so large. I realized that those two are truly and genuinely foolish. It seems they are burdened with debt, and the story has spread to neighbors, and even my brother-in-law and his wife. Now, they are so confused that they can't even walk outside. Truly, there is no salvation for such people. On the other hand, to sever ties with my ex-husband and his family, I returned to my parents' home. I quit the hospital where I had been working and started a new life with my son in a peaceful countryside. My son seemed to sense, even as a child, that I had been hurt by my ex-husband and his mother. And I think my son has been smiling more and more since we started living together. I will protect this smile for the rest of my life. I made that vow in my heart. When 5 wives with suspicions of infidelity in their husbands gathered for the first time, one of the betrayed wives pulled out a tablet linked to her husband's messaging app. On it, exchanges between the cheating husbands were displayed. A message read, "How about a trip next time? Of course, all of us. My family owns a spacious villa." Another husband replied, "Sounds great. Let's all go." "Sounds good. Let's all go," replied another. Furthermore, another husband stated, "A trip with just the guys. Being unmarried is the best." Everyone chimed in with "Sounds good" and "Seriously the best." From there, plans from the trip began to take shape in the messaging app group. While showing the tablet, one wife turned pale and said, "This means each of them will bring their respective affair partners, and we'll be a group of 10 on the trip, right?" Upon hearing that, I felt a surge of anger rising within me. A group infidelity trip with 10 people. What are these guys thinking? I'll definitely bring them down to hell. Our counterattack is about to begin. My name is Amelia, and I'm a 34-year-old part-time housewife. I met my husband, William, through my friend Karen's introduction. Karen and I were close friends from the same club in college, and despite working at different companies after graduation, we remained good friends. Around when I was the age of 28, Karen suggested I meet a junior colleague of hers. That's when I was introduced to William, 2 years younger than me. As Karen had previously told me, William was a bit of a goofball, but he had a cheerful personality. I gradually started to like him. Karen, too, was dating William's colleague, Samuel, and the four of us often went on double dates. Later, Karen and Samuel got married. William and I were invited to Karen's weddings as best friends, and a year later, William proposed to me. When we were getting married, William told me, "Let's build a happy home together." Yeah, with you, William, that seems possible. I want to make our wedding as fun as possible. Of course. We have to invite Karen and the other couples. At this time, I was indeed surrounded by happiness. However, after starting our life together, a dark cloud quickly loomed over our newlywed days. Despite both of us working, William did no household chores. Despite my nagging, he only gave me a bothersome look and never helped. He often argued about household matters, and the married life I imagined became distant. After being married for a year, William started coming home later and later. He even said he had to work on weekends and holidays, leading to a noticeable decrease in our couple conversations. I was troubled about what to do. One evening, out of the blue, I was summoned to a bar by my close friend, Karen. Since I received a message from William that he would be late that day, I decided to meet Karen, seizing the opportunity to spread my wings. Long time no see, Karen. It's been a long time since we've seen each other since we got married. I cheerfully greeted her, but she seemed strangely serious. Thank you for coming, Amelia. What's going on, Karen? Why such a gloomy face? Did something happen? Amelia, has everything been going well with William lately? Asked this, I momentarily choked on my words. Can I say that everything is fine when he's uncooperative with housework and our home life is in chaos? Why are you asking such a thing? Did something happen? Then, as if resigned, Karen handed me her phone. On the screen was something like the playback interface of a video. What's this? It might be shocking, but take a look at the content, Karen said, looking down. I nervously clicked play. It showed the figures of two men from the shadows of a large potted plant, and their conversation was clearly audible. Hey, William, how's it going with your wife lately? Oh, you don't need to ask, right? Not at all. She's so annoying, telling me to do housework. I mean, we're married, so shouldn't the wife do it? It was undoubtedly a conversation between my husband, William, and Karen's husband, Samuel. Despite the shock, I continued watching. It's the same everywhere. Karen's also annoying, you know. Just because I got promoted, she acts high and mighty at home. She doesn't know about gender equality. We might have been at a loss marrying older women. Exactly. Just getting older and more annoying. William and Samuel were excitedly bad-mouthing us and laughing together. Even that alone was shocking. But then, William spoke up. Dealing with the grind of office life, getting bossed around at home. We need some relief, right? You got it. Ugh. Don't want to see Karen's face anymore. Can't wait to see Diana. I'm grabbing a meal with Nola today. Not just food, huh? You really caught that receptionist, huh? That's where I shine. You've had your moments with Diana too, Mr. Sales Department's charmer. They share vulgar laughs. Nola? Diana? This conversation, is it what I think? The next moment, Samuel's words confirmed my unsettling suspicion. But no one would imagine we're having an office affair, huh? You got a wife at the office and you're still doing this. That's where the thrill is. Of course, we can't let it be discovered. My hands were trembling as I realized. An office affair? And both William and Samuel? Their conversation continued.
By the way, did you know? Our juniors, Mark and Jeff, in the sales department are also hooked up with some girls. Seriously? All I know is that the receptionist is dating Bill. Bill too? Mark, Jeff, and Bill are all married, right? How much are they fooling around? Right. Let's go for drinks with Mark, Jeff, Bill, and us. We'll call it the Cheating Husbands Club. Sounds good. I'll invite them next week.
The video ended there. I stared in shock and looked at Karen. What does this mean? William, Samuel, and I are in different departments. So 3 days ago, a junior from my department went to the break room and overheard this conversation without them realizing. My junior, understandably upset, recorded a video and reported it to me. Karen said with a tired expression, and I responded with a trembling voice. We need to confront them immediately. It's unbelievable, both of them having an affair. Wait, Amelia, calm down. Even if we confront them, the evidence is weak. It's also an internal issue, so we need more confirmation. Oh, I see. For now, I plan to inform the wives of Mark, Jeff, and Bill. If we do that, we might collaborate to gather evidence. Of Mark, Jeff, and Bill, Karen is acquainted with Mark's wife and has her contact information. Since Mark's wife seems to have connections with Jeff's and Bill's wives, Karen will rely on Mark's wife for further steps. If they have the Cheating Husbands Club, then we'll have the Betrayed Wives Club, right? With a wry smile, Karen continued. We disbanded temporarily, returning to our respective lives. I wasn't sure how to face William, and his frequent absence honestly helped. The following week, the Betrayed Wives Club came into existence. The wives of Mark, Jeff, and Bill, watching the video, were shocked. To add to it, Mark's and Bill's wives were pregnant. I felt sorry for them, knowing we unintentionally delivered such a blow. Unbelievable. I had no clue. Tears welled up in Mark's and Jeff's wife's eyes. Then Bill's wife informed us. It seems like the Cheating Husbands Club has already taken place. They've created a group on the messaging app. Huh? You saw messages on your husband's app? Yes, he syncs his smartphone with the tablet. He was coming home late, so I had my suspicions. Take a look at this. Bill's wife took out the tablet. The content was as follows. William.
Thanks for today. It was fun.
Everyone responded to it. Samuel added.
But seriously, it feels great that we're all doing the same thing.
And everyone agreed. Mark continued.
Let's keep this going. By the way, how about a trip soon? Of course, with everyone. I have a spacious villa at my family's place.
Then Jeff responds.
Sounds good. Let's all go.
Bill also said.
It's a trip with 5 guys. It's great that I don't have a wife.
Everyone said.
I love it. Great.
And so on. From there, travel plans began to be made on that messaging app. Showing the tablet, Bill's wife, with a pale face, says, From the conversation, I had assumed they were going with just the guys. So, when they say everyone, does that mean each of them is bringing their affair partner, making it a total of 10 people on this trip? Then Mark's wife puts in a few words. Indeed, my husband's family is wealthy and they own a villa near the sea. This trip is undoubtedly happening. I could feel the anger boiling up inside me. A group infidelity trip with 10 people. What on earth are they thinking? I'm going to make them suffer, no doubt about it. At that moment, Karen suddenly started laughing. Has she finally reached her mental limit? To ease our concerns, Karen shares her thoughts. Why not? Let's gather solid evidence during this trip. We'll keep them in the dark until the trip, and then settle the score. After that, we created a group for the cheated wives on a messaging app and decided to exchange information while collecting evidence individually until the day of the trip. I acted as if everything was normal at home, so William seemed oblivious to anything. After a while, William informed me.
Hey, I'm going on a trip next break.
What? With who? Where?
Samuel and 3 of my juniors. One of my juniors has a vacation home.
Oh, really? Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a guys only trip. Isn't it great?
I smiled mischievously while observing my cheerful husband. And the day arrived. I took the wheel and the 5 of us traveled by rental car to our destination. There was a famous tourist spot near the villa, and Mark's wife suggested they might go there, so we headed in that direction. Mark, Jeff, and Bill's wives waited in the car while Karen and I disguised ourselves and explored the sights. Suddenly, we spotted a lively group ahead. It was them. Each of them walked happily, arm in arm with their respective partners. Karen and I captured plenty of photos and videos of them. Soon, they began taking pictures at famous tourist attractions. After each couple had their picture taken, the men took a picture of the men and the women took a picture of the women. Of course, I also captured those scenes on video from afar. Then suddenly my cell phone rang. It was a message from William, along with a photo of only the guys saying, "Guys only trip is awesome." When I asked Karen, she mentioned Samuel had sent a similar photo. As soon as we posted this in the Cheated Wives group, we received a prompt reply from Mark, Jeff, and Bill's wives. Got an obvious camouflage photo from Karen. Thinking this won't be discovered is pretty amusing, right? Seriously, they're all too foolish. Karen and I exchanged glances and couldn't help but laugh. From there, we waited for the night to fall and finally moved near the villa. In the villa's living room, the uproar of the 10 people began. Afterward, they moved to their respective rooms as couples. This was confirmed through footage from surveillance cameras at the villa obtained by Mark's wife. After about 30 minutes using the key Mark's wife had, we infiltrated the villa. Each of us dramatically opened the door to our respective husband's room. In front of my eyes were the seemingly happy couple. I immediately captured that scene in a photo.
Oh, what the? Amelia, why are you here?
The cheating partner, panicking, screamed and hid her body in front of my frantic husband. Similar shouts and screams can be heard from each room. I angrily yelled at William. Come to the living room immediately. Right now. Hurry. William, flustered at my words, led his cheating partner to the living room. In the living room, each husband and their affair partner were assembled, dressed only in underwear. We, the betrayed wives, tried to make them sit on the floor. However, Karen's husband, Samuel, vehemently refused. In the next moment, Karen swiftly delivered a punch to Samuel's abdomen. Ugh, he groaned, dropping to his knees. Well done, Karen. Being the ace of the karate club pays off. I said with a smile, and Karen responded, But Amelia, you're a black belt too, and laughed. In our university, we were both members of the karate club. They turned pale and stopped resisting when Karen and I cracked our knuckles. Seeing 10 people sitting on the floor in their underwear was quite an unusual sight. Now, shall we get them to confess? What were you all doing here? As Karen declared this, Samuel responded nervously.
This is a misunderstanding. It's all a mistake.
All the betrayed wives glared at Samuel, and in a mosquito-like voice he confessed.
We were cheating.
We then had each of them admit to the affair one by one, and we recorded them on video in turn. Some of the affair partners even burst into tears. Well then, shall we proceed, everyone? I said with a smile, and Karen and Mark's, Jeff's, and Bill's wives each took out divorce papers from their bags, presenting them in front of the husbands. From that point on, it was truly chaotic.
Please, spare us from divorce. Forgive us, this wasn't our intention.
Screams and cries resembling despair echoed in the room. Amidst this, William pleaded with me.
Amelia, are you serious about divorce? I don't want that.
Huh? Finding me annoying, aren't you? Regretting marrying an older wife? When I showed him the video I received from Karen, William froze.
Why even this?
I know everything. I've had enough of you. We're getting divorced. Be prepared to pay the $30,000 for the alimony compensation.
No way.
William looked at me with a tearful face. Then I looked at his affair partner. Nola, the receptionist, I'll be claiming from you as well. I don't want that. I can't pay. Then let's go to court. I'll make sure you pay. Looking around, after settling matters with each couple, I could see crying women and pale-faced husbands. Especially Mark and Jeff, whose wives were pregnant, had faces covered in bruises. We lined up each of our husbands and had them filled out divorce papers almost simultaneously. Karen made sure that each person puts the document in his or her bag, then tells them. Of course, I'll report this to the company as well. Then everyone pleaded,
Please don't do that.
In unison. You all may have forgotten, but I work in the Human Resources Department. In response to Karen's provocation, Mark, Bill, and Jeff's wives and I chimed in. We'll also sue the company with evidence. The threatening words made them all turn pale and tremble. Watching their reaction, I glared at them. Well then, everyone, let's go home. Prepare yourselves, you scum. We'll collectively drag you down to hell. Leaving those 10 people in their underwear behind, we departed from the villa. Later on, my divorce with William was finalized. I managed to win $30,000 in compensation from William and $25,000 from his affair partner. It seemed Karen and Samuel, as well as Mark, Jeff, and Bill's wives, also had their divorces finalized. True to our declaration, we filed a complaint with the husbands' companies. The news of a 10-person adultery group within the company caused a commotion. The higher-ups took this matter seriously and demoted all of them. Unable to withstand the gossip within the company, they eventually resigned. William depleted his savings, faced disapproval from both sets of parents, and now lives in a rundown apartment while desperately searching for a new job. Upon hearing this, I couldn't help but think, serves you right. As for the cheating husbands, they're probably experiencing their own version of hell right now. On the other hand, I used the compensation to move, starting a new life. I'm still in touch with Karen, Mark, Jeff, and Bill's wives, meeting for tea regularly. Mark's and Jeff's wives' babies were born safely. What happened back then has become a laughing matter among us. From now on, I would like to cherish what I have left and move on with my life cheerfully.
The first child should definitely be a girl, right? That's what my mother-in-law insisted about the gender of her first grandchild.
No, it doesn't matter as long as the baby is born healthy.
Even so, my mother-in-law insisted on a girl. There is nothing I can do about it now. But my mother-in-law kept trying to make me give birth to a girl. My name is Regina. I'm a 33-year-old part-time housewife. My husband Adrian is 2 years older than me. We have been married for a year and live with my husband's parents. That's because we are saving up to buy a home. My mother-in-law originally suggested it to us because she had an extra room. We share the household chores, and are comfortable without interfering too much with each other. My mother-in-law enjoys gardening. She has seasonal flowers, herbs for cooking, and cucumbers and other fruits in the summer. In winter, she takes a break from gardening, but she's always in the garden, decorating for Halloween and Christmas lights. It's all I have to look forward to. She says that, but it's so good that neighbors come to see it. Then one day, me, my husband, my mother-in-law and my father were having some coffee and tea after dinner. Oh, Regina, why don't you have your usual herbal tea? The raspberry tea, you mean? Tell me if we don't have any. I will get some from the garden. All the teas and spices in our house are homegrown by my mother-in-law. Thank you. I know it's short notice, but can I talk to you both for a second?
What's up, Regina?
I have some news. I'm having a baby. What? My parents look at each other in surprise. Regina, so I'm going to be a grandmother. Oh, what should I do?
I'm so happy my blood pressure is going up.
Whoa. You're excited to be a grandpa, aren't you?
Well, it is so exciting.
Right. So I thought I'd hold off on the raspberry leaf tea for a while I'm pregnant. Oh, why? I heard it can hasten labor. They say it's best to drink it late in the pregnancy and postpartum. I will have to be careful with medications, supplements, and herbs. Oh, yeah.
I gotta be careful too. Pregnant women have a lot of restrictions.
Thank you, Adrian. By the way, my mother-in-law's eyes lit up. Is it a boy or a girl? We just got our heartbeat, so we don't know the gender yet. Of course. Obviously, she's a little down. But then suddenly, oh, that's right. Regina, you should eat more meat. Meat? We are already done with dinner. It's okay. Pregnant women have to eat for two. That's how it used to be. Not anymore, though. Adrian, can you go get us a bunch of meat right now?
What's wrong with you all of a sudden?
Because the first one should definitely be a girl, right?
Oh? Meat? A girl?
We were all dumbfounded, not understanding what she meant, when my mother-in-law explained to us. If you eat a lot of meat, the baby inside your belly will be a girl. That's why Regina should only eat meat.
What? Mom, that's just a myth.
Isn't the mother the one who decides the gender? What superstition?
It's an old wives' tale. It's just a superstition because there's no science to back it up.
My mother-in-law and my husband started arguing.
Hey guys, can't you stop it? Don't you feel sorry for Regina?
Dad tried to stop her, but she didn't seem to hear him. Regina, your face is more tense than before you got pregnant. Did you know? When your face is tense, it's a boy. If it's soft, it's a girl.
No, it's more like an occult thing.
She's changed, you know. Well, if you're not gonna do anything, it's gonna be a boy.
Why not? What's wrong with having a boy?
The first one should be a girl. I want the second to be a boy. I don't really care which gender as long as the baby is born healthy. And the hospital told me to keep my weight under control and my diet balanced, so I was supposed to be happy to report my pregnancy. But I can't believe this is happening. I didn't know my mother-in-law was so concerned about the gender.
What's this I hear about eating meat and having a girl? Regina, go back to your room. Pregnant women get tired easily, right?
Thank you, Dad.
Your mother-in-law's just excited about her first grandchild. I'm sure she will calm down soon. I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize. I'm gonna let my husband take care of his mother. Whether it's a boy or girl, I'm sure my baby will be cute. I'm not going to worry about it too much. 3 months passed. The sickness is no big deal, so I'm still going out to my part-time job as before. I just feel unbearably sleepy and tired easily. My stomach is getting tight, and I feel inconvenienced more and more. I found out the gender of my baby. It was a boy. When I told my mother-in-law, she was very disappointed and sighed many times. I was also very disappointed seeing her like that. It was supposed to be a gift, but my husband and father got mad at her instead. Don't worry too much. Just think about having a healthy baby. One day, I was on my way home from work as usual. I was waiting at the traffic light at an intersection near my house when I saw someone coming out of the house. It was my husband's sister. She left home after getting married, but she often comes to visit us. She's cheerful and friendly, and so I like welcoming her. But she's acting a little strange today, isn't she? She's obviously acting suspicious. She seems to be looking around and is scared of something. She didn't notice me and ran away. What's wrong? I wonder. Did she see something scary in the house? I opened the front door fearfully. It's just as usual, I guess. I'm home. No answer. No one's home? I quietly go in and wash my hands at the sink. I'm still concerned about my sister-in-law's behavior. I wonder what happened. Maybe I should call her. Welcome home. Oh, what's wrong, Regina? You look like you've seen a ghost. Oh, so you were here, Mom? I just got back. Is something wrong? No, nothing. Hey, Regina. I made some herbal tea for pregnant women. Herbal tea? It's a little early for that, I think. It's a baby shower gift from me. Drink it every day, okay? She gives me a small jar filled with herbs and tea. Thank you, Mom. What's this herb for? This is, it, warms you up, helps you sleep. Anyway, it's a good herb for pregnant women. Really? Is that so? You must drink it every day for the baby. Yeah, okay. Take it now. Just hurry up and take one. Should I hurry? Because the sooner the better. I want you to take a drink. Okay. Why don't you drink it with me? Well, it's not really for me, so... Don't say that. I will get some cups. Wait in the living room, okay? And I go to the kitchen. I think there is something wrong with my mother-in-law. There is a note in the paper bag. It says in scrawled handwriting, "Don't drink it. Get away from my mother." From Julia. This reminds me of my sister's desperate look earlier. What does she mean, get out? Is this herbal tea bad? Did my mother-in-law do something bad to the baby? I ran out of the house with the herbal tea and went straight to my sister's house. Julia, I saw the letter and ran away. Thank God you saw it. The tea's still here in the bag. You haven't had it yet, right? No. Good. What the hell is going on? Well, she started talking with a scared look on her face. I couldn't believe my ears. Mom was in the kitchen, chanting a spell. A spell? Yes. She was grinding something and saying, I will make it go away. I don't need it. I will make it go away. I was scared, but I called out to my mom. Mom! What the hell are you doing here? I had a bad feeling when I saw her getting upset. What are you making? I asked her, and she said, it's an herbal tea for you. I hope I misheard you, Mom. But weren't you saying something about making it disappear while you were making it? Did you really say that?
Oh my God! I must be speaking absent-mindedly. Don't tell anyone.
She said it without a hint of apology. What? Really? My mother was like a wicked witch. A witch who makes weird potions. A witch? I had an image of my mother-in-law boiling a cauldron of soup and putting in lizards and mysterious plants while cackling to herself. Julia looked disheartened. I was so scared that I ran away. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Thank you for leaving the letter. If you hadn't, I'd been drinking herbal tea right now. If you say so, thank you. Did my mother-in-law want to get rid of it that bad because she didn't want a baby boy? No way. But that's all I can think. If everything Julia said is true, it's not safe to live in that house anymore. We need to pack our things as soon as possible. But where do we go? I can't move fast with this big belly. I'm getting worried. Julia, what should I do? You have to be strong for the baby. Yes, that's right. If I want to protect the baby, I can't afford to be weak. Okay, how about this, Regina? Let's go back to the house together, and let's find out what this herbal tea is. Yes. My mother-in-law looked worried when I got home.
Where did you go? Oh, were you two together?
I ran into Regina right outside. I heard the news, so I bought a cake. Let's eat it together.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, Adrian and Dad are home. I will make the tea, so just sit down and relax, okay? Julia made tea and prepared the cake for everyone. Of course, only my mother-in-law's cup had the herbal tea that she had wanted me to drink earlier. She made it herself, so she's responsible if she gets food poisoning. I will let her taste it. If anything goes wrong, it's her fault. Bon appetit. After taking a bite of the cake and drinking the herbal tea.
Oh, what's this?
She looked as if she was about to throw up. The witch who had received our turkey soon melted away, except she didn't.
Oh, bleh! So bitter!
I knew it was no ordinary herbal tea.
Oh, hey! What's this tea?
That's what I want to ask you. This is a herb tea that you made and gave me.
What?
Julia told me. You were chanting that I'm no longer needed.
What? You are saying that I did something bad? That's terrible.
Huh? Don't play dumb with me. Yes, Mom. I saw you. I saw you making the herbal tea while saying you don't need it and cursing it. I heard you. Dad and my husband looked like they couldn't believe it.
It's a misunderstanding. I really made this herbal tea for Regina.
Did you have to make it so bitter and undrinkable?
Oh no, isn't that what they say in the old days? The best medicine tastes bitter. That's what they say.
My husband took a sip of the tea.
Whoa, it's really bitter. What kind of herb is this?
She didn't seem affected by his reaction.
It's saw palmetto.
Saw palmetto? Aren't they used in male supplements?
They also have other medicinal properties, you know.
What that herb though?
She answered with a hopeful look.
Because they turns boys into girls.
Huh?
I don't want to say this out loud, but they get rid of the boys' genitals. I've already decided that your first child will be a girl, so we can get rid of the one we don't need.
When my husband and father-in-law heard that, their jaws dropped out of shock. How can that be possible? We will end up with a boy if we don't do something.
So we have to do something.
Mom, That information is a lie. I just looked it up, and it says that anemone is bad for pregnant women because it can cause health problems.
Well,
Do you want it that bad?
what? Then how do I get a girl?
I'm losing my patience. I slam my fist on the table.
How can you do something like that? What if something bad happens to the baby? Regina, don't exaggerate. It's not good for your stomach.
I told you I'm careful about what I put in my mouth, whether it's pills or supplements or herbs. I can't believe you. At that moment, my husband gently put his hands on my shoulder.
Let's all calm down and talk. Mom, I can't believe it either.
My husband speaks calmly, and my mother-in-law is laying everything out as if she's done hiding.
Because I want our first grandchild to be a girl.
Mom, you know that what a pregnant woman eats and drinks can affect her baby, right? Why are you so obsessed with the baby's gender?
You see, I have other things in mind.
What other things?
Serving raw oysters to Regina so that the baby will have beautiful eyes, mayonnaise for beautiful hair, and so on.
Raw oysters?
Yes, I will get them for her.
Mom, it's old superstition, right? You really believe that?
And raw eggs to make the baby grow taller.
When Adrian's father heard that, he was flabbergasted.
What? Raw eggs?
And then some anemone so that Regina and Adrian will stay close to each other.
What anemone? Are you sure about that?
Why are you so surprised?
Well,
What? The anemone that I picked at the park tasted good, didn't it?
was it a wild plant from the park? Hey, we're not talking about whether it tasted good or bad, right? It's dangerous for a pregnant woman to eat something wild. Every year, there are cases where people mistake wild plants for edible herbs, which is dangerous.
Well, didn't people used to eat them in the old days?
It wasn't then like it is now. Besides, pregnant women aren't strong enough, so you never know.
But she's been fine, right, Regina?
I'm fine, but it's too late for that.
I don't want to eat something I don't have to eat.
I'm feeling very anxious right now. I'm sure this mother-in-law will feed the baby whatever she wants, whether it's wild plants, medicine, or allergic food. She will feed it to my baby without thinking about the bad effects. I'm worried about living in the house with my mother-in-law. I can't forgive her for trying to cause my baby harm by believing in superstitions.
Regina, I'm just nervous because it's my first grandchild. Trust me, I'm an expert and I know what I'm talking about. I don't believe anyone who is trying to change the gender of my baby with some herbal tea. I'm sure the baby's listening to this conversation, even if he's still in my belly. What are you talking about? How can he be listening?
Anyway, the danger is not up to us. I'm leaving this house because you don't understand. My father-in-law stopped her from saying anything.
Let's stop this. Regina, I'm sorry. Gladys, you're not allowed to make any more meals for her or make her drink some weird over tea.
Why can't I do that?
Enough! My future grandchildren won't like someone who believes in superstition and doesn't understand people.
No way.
My mother-in-law said weakly and sank to her knees. I hope she will reflect on what she did. But we ended up moving out of the house before the baby was born. She never gave up, even though we had already told her so much. She told me that if I ate a lot of soy protein, my female hormones would increase, and that she wanted to accompany me during my ultrasound, and that if the baby came out, there was still a chance that it would be a girl. I decided that I would not live with her any longer, in order to protect the child. I will not subject my precious child to a mother-in-law who believes in superstitions. Let's assume she is gone for the time being. I'm thankful that my father-in-law and Julia are checking in on me. The newborn is a healthy, happy, and very cute baby boy. My husband said to me as I held him in my arms,
"All I want is for him to be happy."
I know.
Do you want a boy next time? Or a girl? For me, either one is fine.
What? We are already talking about the next one? Although I was exhausted after giving birth, I couldn't help but smile at my husband, who is holding our son in his arms and talking happily. A few years later, we had more children than we could handle. They are all healthy and happy. I can say with certainty that all of them are adorable. I want them to be able to live their lives freely, regardless of their gender, because each of them has their own individuality.
Mom, you said you had a brain hemorrhage, which might leave you paralyzed and in need of care. The day after my mother collapsed, I tearfully told my husband and mother-in-law who met me. Then my husband, a little surprised, says something like this.
Huh. Elderly care? Why don't you just put her in a cheap facility?
Hey, you're joking, right? She's my only mother. As I strained to say this, my husband chuckled dismissively.
You married into this, so your family is irrelevant. And of course, I won't shell out for any facility costs, so don't come leaning on me.
Taking advantage of the situation, my mother-in-law, who had been tormenting me, chimed in. Just as my son says, that old hag should just drop dead already. I reached my breaking point. I could endure their mistreatment towards me, but not when they spoke ill of my mother. I'll never forgive them. I'll show them someday, I vowed. A year later, the chance for revenge came. My name is JC, and I'm a 29-year-old housewife. Originally, I lived with my mother while working at a large corporation. My father passed away when I was in elementary school. Since then, my mother Sylvia raised me alone. I loved my mother dearly. She always watched over me with a gentle smile, despite not being economically privileged. My mother worked 2 jobs and raised me to be independent. I wanted to make life easier for her, so I excelled academically and joined my dream company. When I got the job, my mother was overjoyed, saying, "I'm glad your dream came true." In the department I joined, my senior colleague, Curtis, later became my husband. Curtis mentored me as a training supervisor, and our relationship grew intimate. We started going out for meals together, and our relationship officially began with his confession. Quiet and with little romantic experience, Curtis continuously took the lead with me. We progressed smoothly in our relationship, and he proposed to me when I was 26.
JC, will you marry me? I'm sure I'll make you happy.
Thank you, Curtis. As I blissfully put on the offered ring, Curtis spoke to me.
Well then, I need to go and meet your mother, JC.
Yes, I'm sure my mom will be happy too. Wrapped in Curtis's embrace, gazing at the nighttime panorama, I felt an overwhelming sense of bliss. After a while, we decided to visit my mother for the wedding announcement. Upon hearing the news, my mother teared up with joy. JC, I'm really happy for you. I'm truly delighted, dear. Oh, Mom, don't cry. Curtis, you've taken good care of my daughter. Please continue to make her happy. Upon hearing this, Curtis straightened his back and replied,
Of course. I'll do my best to reassure you. You raised your daughter so well on your own. I will do my best.
I looked at Curtis with such reassurance. The following week, it was time to visit Curtis's parents for the introduction. His parents were already divorced, and he was currently living with his mother in their family home. To avoid being disrespectful to my future mother-in-law, whom I was meeting for the first time, I paid attention to my attire and hairstyle. I prepared a high-quality gift of sweets and headed to my future in-laws' house. Nice to meet you, I'm JC. When I nervously made this introduction, my future mother-in-law scanned me from head to toe. Oh my, Curtis, you surprised me. I never expected you to bring such a plain person. Hearing these words as the first thing said, I involuntarily froze. That's when Curtis said something like this.
Easy there, Mom. Isn't she better than a flashy, extravagant spender?
Well, yes, but I was hoping for someone a bit cuter. And this gift box is in poor taste. Couldn't you have brought a cake with a bit more thought? Saying this, she casually tossed the box of baked goods I gave her onto the dining table. I'm sorry. My mother-in-law snorted at me as I got smaller and took a seat. Curtis urged me to sit next to him.
So, Mom, I want to marry her.
As Curtis announced this, his mother-in-law sighed. Well, Curtis, you are at the age to get married, I suppose. I'll allow it. Oh, thank you. But you, young lady, why don't you quit your job and move in with me? Huh? I looked at Curtis in panic. I had already communicated to him that I wanted to continue working even after marriage, and of course I assumed we would be living together. But Curtis responded happily.
Oh, of course, Mom. That's what being a wife is about, right?
I was left dumbfounded. After a while, the gathering dispersed, and when we were alone, I protested to Curtis. Hey, Curtis, I told you I want to work even after marriage.
Oh, that? I was planned to have you quit once we got married.
What are you talking about?
It's awkward to have your wife in the same company. Besides, I don't want to be seen as a man who can't support his wife on his own income. With an attitude that seemed natural to him, Curtis continued, and even though I felt dizzy, I persisted. And what about living together? I thought we would have our own place. Huh? Did we talk about that? I live with my parents, so if you're coming in as my wife, living together is a given.
But our homes are far apart. The distance between our parents' homes was about a 2-hour drive, and I was uneasy about being separated from my mother. Unaware of my concerns, he continued.
What? Coming in as my wife means leaving your parents' house and entering your husband's house. It has nothing to do with your parents, right? My mom is going to be your mother now.
But...
So you want to call off the marriage? Your mother would be very disappointed, considering how happy she was.
With a threatening tone, Curtis says such things. In the end, I agreed to quit my job and live with his parents. It was tough to leave the company I had worked hard to enter and to move away from my mother, but my mother said this to me. JC, that's what marriage is. Do your best to get along with Curtis and his mother. Mom, I understand. And so, after the wedding with Curtis, I moved in with his parents. On the first day of living together, my mother-in-law told me, From today, all household chores are your responsibility. Do them properly. My mother-in-law didn't work, so I thought household chores would naturally be shared. Still, to avoid conflicts, I reluctantly started unfamiliar household tasks at my in-laws' home. During this time, my mother-in-law watched TV and ate snacks. It seemed she hadn't done much housework before, as their home was quite messy. I was frantically wiping down the place. Before finishing the cleaning, I had to prepare dinner and tidy up the laundry. When Curtis came home and we sat down for dinner, my mother-in-law commented, What's this meal? It's too bland. Although I followed a recipe from a book and tasted it, thinking it was delicious, my mother-in-law began adding salt and pepper. Curtis followed suit.
It's indeed bland. Did you make this, JC?
Yes.
Mom, teach her the taste of the Smith family. You're a housewife, so at least cook properly.
Yes. As I was scolded by Curtis, my mother-in-law looked pleased. After that, the harassment from my mother-in-law continued. I was constantly criticized for household matters. At times, she even made snide remarks about my mother, such as, "I wonder what she taught you at home." When I complained about it, Curtis did not side with me, but rather sympathized with my mother-in-law and blamed me. This kind of life continued for about a year, and I lost a lot of weight due to stress. Still, thinking about how happy my mother was about the marriage, I couldn't bring myself to suggest a divorce right away. At that time, I received a call on my mobile phone. "Hello? Yes? What? Mom?" The call was from a local major hospital. My mother had collapsed while she was out and was rushed to the hospital. Her condition was extremely critical and they wanted me to come immediately. At that moment, my mother-in-law was out visiting a friend and Curtis was at work. I sent a message to Curtis and left a note for my mother-in-law, then hurriedly left the house. At the hospital, I was informed that my mother had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. The surgery was successful, but there might be lingering paralysis in limbs or speech, and she might need additional caregiving. That's what the doctor told me. My mother had a cerebral hemorrhage? Needing caregiving? What should I do? While internally panicking, I continued holding my mother's hand. Later, as my mother's condition stabilized, I decided to go back home for the time being. Upon returning home, my husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me.
A full-time housewife leaving the house overnight. What's that all about? Thanks to you, my mom and I had to go out for dinner yesterday.
My text messages have been read. Despite knowing the situation on my end, Curtis didn't rush to the hospital, but instead says such things. But I sent a text message and left a note, right? My mother collapsed and I had no choice but to go. Then my mother-in-law, seemingly disinterested, remarked, "I don't care about such things. Just hurry up and do the accumulated housework." With a husband and mother-in-law who doesn't worry about my mother, I pleaded with tears in my eyes. They said my mom had a brain hemorrhage, which could possibly leave her paralyzed and in need of care. Curtis seemed somewhat surprised and responded,
"Huh? What do you plan to do now?"
"I still don't know, but if caregiving becomes necessary, I'll have to do it. Please understand." Then Curtis came up with this.
Huh? Caregiving for an old person? Why not put her in a budget facility or something?
Huh? Even my mother-in-law, with a sly smile, joined in, saying, "That's right. Don't neglect your household chores over caregiving for your mother." Hey, you're joking, right? She's my only mother. As I uttered those words, Curtis chuckled dismissively.
That's why you got married, right? Your family has nothing to do with us. Of course, I won't pay for any facility costs, so don't come relying on us.
Even my mother-in-law, who had been tormenting me, took advantage of the situation. Curtis is right. That old hag should just drop dead. I reached my limit at that moment. I could endure their terrible treatment towards me, but I couldn't tolerate them speaking ill of my mother. I swore to never forgive them, and I vowed to show them someday. Silently, I turned on my heel and headed to my room. By then, my love for Curtis had completely vanished, leaving only intense hatred for my mother-in-law and husband. However, I couldn't act immediately. I didn't know what the future held for my mother, and I wasn't employed. I wanted to not only part ways with them, but also inflict some damage. Afterwards, despite complaints from my mother-in-law and husband, I continued visiting my mother in the hospital. Fortunately, her surgery went well, and the paralysis was mild. After about 6 months of rehabilitation, she was deemed fit for home care. JC, I'm sorry for causing you worry. Are you bothering Curtis or your mother-in-law? My mother, in the midst of her own struggles, was still concerned about my relationship with my in-laws. I could only hold her hand and smile. Meanwhile, at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law and husband started criticizing me for neglecting household chores due to my mother's situation. Don't slack off on housework just because of your mother. What kind of daughter-in-law are you? My mother-in-law glared at me as I silently did the housework. Curtis joined in.
Yeah, it was tough back then, huh, Mom? I'm sorry for marrying a woman who lacks self-awareness.
That's right, Curtis. That's why I opposed the marriage.
I should have thought more. I'm sorry for causing trouble for you, Mom.
It's not your fault, Curtis. It's all because that woman is a failure. I acted as if I didn't hear their words. Gradually, I stopped talking in this house and became like a household robot. Despite that, my mother-in-law and husband continued their verbal abuse without a care. Meanwhile, I recorded their rants and continued to study for my certifications. I was determined to be able to support myself even after parting ways with Curtis. I kept trying, sometimes in between chores, sometimes even cutting back on my sleeping hours. About a year after my mother fell ill, while doing housework, my phone rang. "Are you Mrs. Curtis Smith?" Actually, it was an employee from Curtis's company who delivered the message with a tense voice. Curtis had been involved in a traffic accident while out on business and was urgently transported to the hospital. After hanging up the phone, I calmly informed my mother-in-law of the hospital where he was admitted. Curtis had an accident? I must go immediately. You prepare for his hospitalization and come right away, understood? My mother-in-law rushed out of the house with a changed expression. On the other hand, I remained quite composed. I took care of some errands and returned home, enjoying a rare night alone. The next day, I leisurely woke up and headed to Curtis's hospital. As soon as I opened the door to the hospital room, my mother-in-law's angry shouts greeted me. "Too late! What are you doing when Curtis is in such a critical condition?" I ignored her and approached Curtis's bed. Curtis weakly opened his eyes. "Curtis is partially paralyzed. His spine was injured in the accident." My mother-in-law began crying beside the bed, and Curtis meekly spoke.
"It turned out like this, but I want to go home. JC, I'm counting on you for caregiving from now on."
Ignoring his words, I smiled and took something out of my bag. It was the divorce agreement I had received the day before. My part was already signed. "Curtis, please proceed with the divorce."
"Huh?"
As my mother-in-law and husband's eyes widened, I told them matter-of-factly. "You told my mother to go to a facility, right? Does that scum of a husband need caregiving? Why not go to a budget facility yourself?" What are you saying?" My mother-in-law murmured with a trembling voice. I ignored her and handed the divorce agreement with a smile. "You can sign it when you're able to get up. I'll be leaving today, so why don't you and your mother help each other and live together?"
"Hey, JC, you're joking, right? You're not going to abandon me in this state, are you?"
As Curtis pleaded with tears welling up, I retorted, "Who abandoned my mother a year ago? Who's going to take care of someone like you? It's karma. Serves you right. Just go to hell, both of you scumbags." Leaving Curtis and my mother-in-law dumbfounded, I walked away. Later, I moved my belongings to my parents' house before my mother-in-law returned. Since we had discussed it in advance, my mother warmly welcomed me back. After a contentious process, Curtis and I divorced. The recordings of Curtis and my mother-in-law's verbal abuse worked in my favor, and I received a fair share of assets. Curtis returned home, and his care fell upon my mother-in-law. Despite receiving insurance money, he couldn't continue working and ended up resigning from his job. He became almost bedridden at home, spiraling into despair. Now my mother-in-law is reportedly struggling to care for him. I heard that my mother-in-law too aged considerably and turned completely white-haired due to the fatigue of caregiving. Despite knowing that, I could only think that it serves her right for the suffering she caused. On the other hand, I returned to work while living with my mother. Thanks to the qualifications I had studied for, I secured a job with similar conditions to my previous one after changing jobs. Fortunately, my mother is doing well and enjoying her hobbies. From now on, I plan to work hard while supporting my mother and strive to brighten my own life.
I never liked you from the start. Don't come near my family for anything other than formal occasions.
How self-centered can someone be before they are satisfied? Okay, got it. I decided not to get involved as she demanded. Time passed, and our circumstances went through various changes. One day, the in-laws showed up at our house.
Wait, what's going on here?
Oh, I guess I didn't tell you. But wasn't it you who said not to get involved in anything other than formal occasions? I don't see how it's my fault. I'm Catherine, our 30-year-old PR manager. Currently, I'm dating a guy named Leo. We are colleagues, working at the same office. Back when we were both new hires, we used to chat about work at the cafe during our daily reflection sessions. Among the new hires, we seemed more driven, actively going after work tasks. Our mindsets were similar, and we respected each other, which led us to get closer. As we got used to work and started producing results, we found room for romance and began dating. Honestly, I had hidden feelings for a while, but it seemed like both of us couldn't keep it in anymore. Since then, we enjoyed each other's company while working hard on our jobs. About 3 years into dating, he popped the question.
I can't help but feel like our meeting was fate, or the universe doing its thing. If I hadn't taken that year off before college, we wouldn't have ended up in the same company at the same time, you know? Anyway, I'm thinking a lot, and I really want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?
Oh, baby, of course yes. That's how we ended up happily engaged. I was over the moon to marry the man I loved. He was always sweet and caring and cherished me dearly. Before getting engaged, we lived together for about a year. He was considerate and great at cooking and cleaning, which convinced me that I could keep thriving in my career without a problem after the marriage. Overall, marrying him seemed like it would bring happiness in many ways. Soon after, we went to meet each other's family.
If it's you, Leo, I can entrust my daughter to you without worries. Take good care of her, okay? Of course, I will do my best to keep her smiling.
My parents absolutely adored him. They must have seen his genuine side. I was thrilled that they wholeheartedly approved of him. Next was visiting his family. As the day for the visit approached, he started looking uneasy. What's wrong? Something happened?
Oh no,
He suddenly faltered and procrastinated. Then, as if he made up his mind, he opened his mouth again.
Actually, my family is a bit difficult. I'm worried they might say something rude to you.
Really? According to him, his mom and sister are quite troublesome.
I think mom and my sister are self-centered. They get ticked off over trivial things and won't accept anything less than being treated as number one. They are quite egocentric.
I became a bit anxious hearing that and wondered if I would get along with them.
But don't worry, honey. I'm always on your side, no matter what. Even if they say unpleasant things to you, don't forget that I'm here.
Sure, okay. Thanks, hon. His usual sweetness served as a comforting anchor. Even so, I still couldn't wipe away my doubt completely. Of course I did trust him, but when it came to family ties versus someone who is not blood related, I honestly didn't know whom he would prioritize. He could have suddenly taken his family's side. As the visiting day got closer, I started feeling more nervous.
Sorry for saying weird stuff a few days ago, adding unnecessary stress on you. But if I didn't tell you beforehand, I thought the shock could be harder if something happened.
Yeah, I get it. On the way to his family's place, we spoke a bit more about them. but the tension inside me didn't really ease up. We arrived after about 30 minutes of driving. Wait, this is where you grew up? It looked grand on a massive property. The long driveway to the front door and the stylish exterior. It screamed wealth. I'd heard his dad ran a company, but he'd always downplayed it, saying it's not that big deal. I had no idea how well off they were. Seeing the house, I finally sensed they were pretty well-to-do. When he pressed the intercom at the gate, a cheerful woman's voice answered, "Hey!" As soon as we parked in front of the house door swung open, and his mom, Rachel, came out.
Oh my God! You are finally here! Come on in.
Hi, thank you for having us today. She was beautiful and looked stunning in her long flowy dress. Since there was an older sister, she was probably in her 60s, but she must have had good genes. She had an elegant appearance like royalty. She greeted us with a smile, leading us into the living room. There, I met Leo's father Tim, his sister Gigi, and her husband. I'm Catherine. Happy to meet you all. I introduced myself, and they returned the greeting with smiles.
Why don't we have a pleasant meal and get to know each other?
Tim suggested, and popped champagne for toast. I felt a sense of relief when I found them all friendly. They seemed nicer than Leo had described. However, the atmosphere changed drastically during the conversation that followed.
So, Catherine, you work at the same company as Leo, right?
Yes, that's right.
That company is a big one. Are you a contract worker there?
Oh no, I'm a full-time employee hired right after graduation. Leo and I started at the same time.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you must be excellent. Which university did you graduate from?
I studied at Fordham.
Oh, you are from the same university as me. This is incredible. We are both alumni. I'm happy to hear that. You are not only academically brilliant, but also from my alma mater. I'm really pleased that such an excellent girl and my son are getting married.
His enthusiasm filled me with joy as well. But at that moment, I noticed Rachel and Gigi staring at me with intense coldness. What do you enjoy doing in your free time, Rachel? I quickly changed the subject, but it seemed like they had already soured their moods and didn't engage with me.
I don't have anything interesting to brag about to someone as outstanding as you. I'm just a housewife, you know. Well, I got married when I was 27, earlier than you though.
Me too. I also got married at 28. Getting married at 30 is late, you know. They smirked at me. I felt like a small prey, circled by hyenas. I knew it was just going downhill from there. Leo seems to feel the same way, and immediately defended me.
There is no superiority in this era about the age to get married. Marrying young isn't something to boast about.
It made them sullenly silent. I tried to keep conversing with the help of alcohol, but while they happily engaged with Leo, their attitude towards me remained cold. Tim seems to have low alcohol tolerance and dozed off quickly, and Gigi's husband focused on eating and drinking, staying out of it. As I was feeling extremely uncomfortable, Leo came to my rescue by saying,
"Should we head back?"
and took me away from his parents' place. Since he had to drive, he hadn't been drinking and was able to keep a clear view of the situation.
I'm really sorry. I never know what ticks them off. They both graduated from unknown universities, so they seem to have a complex about education.
Oh, I see. I couldn't change my educational background, even if they didn't like it. Honestly, They had amazing looks, so I thought they could compete on other grounds besides education. I concluded that understanding someone's insecurity was like trying to solve quantum science for me. Anyway, we managed the introductions, but there was a dinner gathering between our families later on. I felt depressed thinking about having to meet Rachel and Gigi again. When the actual family meeting happened, those two were a hassle again.
I'm tired of this restaurant, you know. I thought we would have dinner somewhere better.
Both of them complained about the private dining venue I had chosen. What was worse, Tim joined their side this time around.
Maybe you don't have a high standard of food. I'm worried about what you will cook for Leo. Can you prepare proper meals?
According to Leo, Tim was head over heels for Rachel and was somewhat subservient. Rachel must have instructed him not to be friendly with me after the last visit. His attitude drastically changed and became overbearing.
Don't worry, Dad. She's a great cook. Well, I wish you'd choose a better place than this.
Rachel and Gigi looked at each other with a smug smile on their face. With an already troublesome mother and sister, even the father joining them made it unbearable. My parents were seriously concerned about me after the dinner.
Are you sure about this marriage? You're the one who is going to have a hard time, you know.
I will be fine. Leo will protect me. I said so, but I couldn't get rid of my anxiety, to be honest. After sending the family off, Leo came back to us.
I'm really sorry for my family's unpleasantness. I will promise to shield her from them, so please let us get married.
He pleaded with my parents, looking ashamed. Seeing his desperate state, it seems they chose to keep an eye on things for the time being. From there, we started preparing for the wedding, but to my surprise, Rachel and Gigi forcibly came along to the wedding dress fitting. I had no choice but to try on various dresses in front of them, but they completely dismissed my choices and pushed for different ones. Honestly, none of them suited me at all. I preferred the dress I picked earlier. It was my wedding after all, so I wanted to value my own opinion. When I tentatively expressed my preference to them, they put on mocking smiles.
Oh, how rude. Rejecting our choices when we were trying to help. Is that how you will behave after marriage? I can't stand such an arrogant in-law. If you won't wear the dress we chose, maybe we should cancel our attendance at the wedding.
At that moment, I realized they were purposely recommending dresses that didn't suit me.
Mom, don't be ridiculous. This is our wedding. She will wear what she wants, and you're a family, so I want you guys there.
I know. We were just kidding.
They seemed to be delighted in Leo's frustration and my distress. Even before the wedding, I was already exhausted. Finally, the wedding day arrived, and so did our big problem. Rachel and Gigi were nowhere to be seen. Even Tim and Gigi's husband were a no-show. Leo frantically called the house.
Why aren't you guys here? Huh? Cancel? How come? You got me kidding me. Didn't you say it was a joke about the dress?
Unbelievably, they actually decided to skip the wedding because I chose the dress I wanted. Not to mention, they informed us at the last minute, which showed their truly despicable character. Leo immediately apologized to my parents.
I'm really sorry for the inconvenience caused by my family.
I wondered how many times he had to apologize because of them. It was all their fault, so seeing him like that made me pity him. Then, my parents suggested something. Why not honestly tell the guest?
Excuse me?
I mean, it's abnormal for the groom's family not to show up, isn't it? And their reason is ridiculous.
so there's no need to worry about it.
Yeah, that's true.
He agreed, and at the beginning of the ceremony, he took the mic and made an announcement.
Thank you all for gathering here today. I need to tell you that my family isn't, actually in attendance.
The chapel buzzed with murmurs.
Well, the reason they're not here is selfish and petty. My mother and sister feels insecure about having a lower education than Catherine, and have been mistreating her since the first time they met. And just now, they told us that they were not coming. They want to embarrass Catherine. My dad and brother-in-law went along as they have no will of their own, and are easily manipulated by them. Honestly, I'm ashamed that such people are my family. But I love Catherine, and I've decided to protect her no matter what. So I'd like a favor from all of you. Please bless our marriage, and let's celebrate our union today. Thank you.
The chapel was filled with whistles and applause. The wedding proceeded in a wonderful atmosphere, and everyone's blessings made it a blissful event. We finished the night filled with joy and warmth from the magical day. The next day, Leo received a barrage of calls from Rachel.
Hello? What now?
Hey, what have you done? Relatives are calling us saying we went too far. What did you tell them at the wedding?
I just stated the facts as they were. You and Gigi canceled at the last minute because you were jealous of Catherine and were being nasty.
What the? It sounds like we're the bad ones.
It's not sound like, but you are.
Shut up. I didn't think you would stoop so low. It's all her doing, isn't it? Let me speak to her.
Yeah, right.
Put her on the phone now.
I could hear her shouting. I told him I would take over the call.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty upset too. Hello? Is this Rachel?
How dare you manipulate my son? You're such an unscrupulous woman.
Who is being unscrupulous here? You have blatantly been nasty to me and ditched the wedding at the last minute. Do you realize how much you hurt Leo?
Shut up. I never liked you from the start. Don't come near my family for anything other than formal occasions.
I wondered how selfish she needed to be before she was satisfied. Okay, got it. I was determined not to get involved as she demanded. I will steer clear and won't have anything to do with you from now on.
Great.
I'm cutting ties with you all too. I'm on her side.
Fine. Do as you please.
And she hung up the phone. We were thoroughly fed up with her and the rest. We decided not to contact them under any circumstances. Time passed, and various changes happened in our lives. It was roughly around 3 years later. One day, my in-laws came over to our place out of the blue.
Why did they come here? What do we do? Ignore them?
It's fine. I want to know why they came. We opened the door, and there stood my 4 in-laws. All of them looked equally worn out.
Let us in.
Tim led the way, and they barged right into the house. Then, Rachel exclaimed in surprise.
Oh my God! What's this about? Why there a baby?
That's our child born last year.
Why didn't you tell us?
Oh, I guess I never mentioned it to you. But didn't you tell me not to get involved except for formal occasions? I don't see how it's my fault. When I calmly retorted, she went quiet, looking frustrated.
What did you guys come here for? We were here to get a favor repaid. Huh? Favor? The company is in trouble. We need funds, so you should repay the expenses we helped you with during the university.
We were dumbfounded. Suddenly showing up and demanding money seems tyrannical.
Wait a minute. Is the company really in trouble? Yeah, it is. The times have changed, and it's been going downhill.
Okay, but demanding the repayment doesn't seem right, does it? Sure, I'm grateful I could graduate and get a job because of it.
But it was you guys who insisted on me going to college. You said not to worry about money. Asking for it back now isn't reasonable. Don't mess with me. You're my son. Sons have an obligation to help their parents. Yeah, about that. I'm no longer your son.
Oh, come on. What are you talking about?
After the wedding, I legally changed my last name. You guys are strangers now.
What? Wait, what do you mean?
I'm really furious about what happened back then. I decided I want nothing to do with you guys. We were not family anymore, so don't rely on me. I could care less if your company goes down. That's outrageous. That's unforgivable. I don't need your approval. I'm on Catherine's side. I will never forgive you for hurting her. Well then, strangers, get out of here now. If you don't want the police involved.
Police? That's a problem. Our business is already in trouble, and it will be all over if the police get involved.
They made a hasty exit, leaving trails of urgency in their wake. I felt a little satisfaction, seeing those who mocked me in such a predicament. To avoid any more unexpected visits, we decided to move. By the way, Tim's company did go bankrupt, and Jesus' husband, who worked there, also lost his job. As a result, they all seem to be struggling financially now. I've heard they constantly quarrel within the family. They've also been asking relatives for financial aid, causing some resentment towards them. Meanwhile, Leo and I have found complete happiness and tranquility in our new home. Our everyday joy is spending time with our child and enjoying happy moments as a family of 3. Going forward, we just want to be there together, watching our child grow.